Welcome into the Phoenix Downbeat. I'm Drew Kreisman, along with my brother Ira Kreisman. You know us as the Everything is Final Fantasy podcast, and we are joined once again by our friend Ryan Laney of Airship Overdrive. And on this episode, another world awaits us. It was going to happen eventually, so I figured get it out of the way early. Maybe that's my one. You each can have one.
Yeah, let's go!
Also getting it out of the way early. Ira, are you going to save yours? Or
I think I'm going to have to, yeah.
Indefinitely? Yeah, all right. Yeah, we'll see. He's going to spring it on us when we least expect it. Now it's even scarier that way. So if you didn't know, we're talking about Otherworld from Final Fantasy X. Woo is correct.
Yeah, we've talked about Overworlds, O-V-E-R, and so it seemed just so fitting to go right into Otherworld, O-T-H-E-R, which is a killer song and a complete departure from the typical Final Fantasy, sound palette than we'd experienced in the first 9 mainline games.
Yeah, so before we listen to stuff, setup question for you, Ryan, and this may be a very simple answer. What genre is this?
So you can easily dive into some minutia debate over, is this metal, is it gent, is it sludge? I don't think it's quite sludge metal or like doom metal, but it's basically it's heavy metal. This of course was written either in 2000, 2001, somewhere in that area, when there was just kind of like emerging these new genres of like new century metal music was coming around compared to what we'd heard back from like the days of Black Sabbath into the 90s. And it's basically at its core, it's metal. You could get into arguments about what subgenre it is exactly. I'm not enough of a metalhead, even though I'm a guitarist. I'm not a metalhead enough to have any authority to speak to that. But it's heavy metal, like straight up. There's no question.
So I find what really helps on podcasts and all my years of podcasting is a good visual aid. That's what people like on a podcast. Do either of you recognize this?
Oh yeah, this is from School of Rock. It's the whiteboard that Jack Black's character basically like draws out to teach the kids literally the history of rock.
Yeah, and it's pretty oversimplified in some ways, but it's actually fairly good for something that's in the background of a movie for a few seconds. And I did find it interesting, mainly some of the categories, like some of the examples that he puts under. And for heavy metal, he's got Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, and Metallica. And those are the types of bands that I think, you are inspiring this piece. And as much as Uematsu's used electric guitars in Final Fantasy before, we heard some very gently in 6, some pretty aggressively in 7. But I think you talked about, and those are more like prog rock, or maybe he put on here closer to new wave or close grunge, maybe even before we get to this, which is just full on the far right end of that spectrum there, heavy metal.
Yeah, Uematsu, he was definitely a fan in the 80s and 90s and probably earlier of bands like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, ELP. And they used, because Uematsu himself is a keyboard player primarily, and they used a lot of that kind of like rock organ, jazz organ sort of sound. And so you hear things like, for example, in Battle of the Big Bridge or Clash of the Big Bridge from Final Fantasy V, that song, many parts of it could just straight up be from an ELP album, and you would not know any different. And now we're finally seeing, which by the way, surprisingly enough, Uematsu did write this song. I always assumed it was one of those songs that the other composers on 10 wrote as he was kind of handing the reins over. But no, this is actually from Uematsu. Only the lyrics were from someone else. But this is, very much the first time we're hearing like this kind of guitar sound come out, this kind of heavy metal sound.
All right, let's take a listen. Starters right there before we get anything else, because that's too much tasty jam to jump into. That's a riff, Ryan.
It's crunchy. So the first thing I wanted to address is obviously how we're getting that kind of sound. And let me just ask, for Drew or Ira, are either of you guitarists or have like played in a metal band of any kind, or know much about like how the sounds that we're hearing are made?
Not even a little bit.
And I stood next to a guitar player who played electric. I played a lot of acoustic. I was in a 2-person band for a little while, where I provided the rhythms and the acoustic and the sort of bass line, right? And my partner would go off on his electrics with his pedals and his wahs and his Jimi Hendrix knowledge and do whatever it was he did. And I went, oh, that sounds incredible. There was a time at which I knew a little bit more about pedals and played around with them some, but I wouldn't want to feign anything closer than I stood next to people while they were doing it.
Perfect. So I'll explain a little bit of what we're hearing, how this guitar sound is made. And obviously for the listeners at home, I'm not going to do like a massive deep dive into everything, but at least enough so you kind of just roughly get an idea of like, how is that metal sound first even made? So the first thing we're hearing is this is not even a normally tuned guitar or normally tuned band setup that we're hearing with the group that's playing Otherworld here. When you normally hear a guitar being played, it's in the key, or not the key, it's in the tuning of what you just call like standard E tuning. And what that basically means is that your lowest string, your lowest sounding string, is just an E natural. You can hear a little bit there that I'm playing. And that's just an E with a little bit of distortion behind it, nothing fancy. I'll talk about pedals and distortion and stuff in a minute as well. And you will frequently hear stuff that is in what's called drop tuning, typically drop E flat or drop D tuning. And that can have different terminologies, but basically if someone says something is in a detuned or drop E flat, that generally means that all of the strings have been lowered by 1/2 step. And so instead of E, A, D, G, B, E being your strings, it's E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B flat, E flat. So if I play this, I'll take the distortion off here. If I just play an open chord, or an open, all the strings open, we get this, which is essentially just drop E flat. But then they go one step farther, because if you've ever heard of what's called drop D tuning, drop D is where all of the higher strings, the 5 higher ones, are in their normal stuff, just A, D, G, B, E. But then the lowest string, that low E, is dropped down even lower to go down to a D. So you basically can play these big chugging open chords with just one finger, quite literally. So if I detune this down now, and we go down to about drop D, all your stuff comes from here. And when you apply some distortion to that, it literally sounds heavier. There's a lot more width to what you're hearing, right?
Yeah.
And then they took it yet again, even one step farther, because what they're basically playing in is drop E flat with a drop D flat on the bottom string. So a note that's normally going to play an E natural is actually 3/2 steps lower than what you would normally play. And so we get down to, try to get this tuned up just right, down here. And so now this note, this bottom note I can play on my guitar at this point, is way lower, way crunchier, and way just like fatter than anything you can get from a standard just open E tuning, right? Does that kind of make sense for the people in the room?
Yeah. It's been a long time since I've heard the term drop D. It's been a minute. Again, standing next to people who knew how to do that. But that's really interesting when you talk about widening it out. That's one of the first things that we do learn, like in band, right? Anyone who took Intro 2 or something like that, you learn about the pyramid of sound. And so when you're widening the bass, you're providing for a broader depth. Broader depth feels like a weird sentence, but yeah, that's an interesting way to think about it.
By the way, you are probably the first person in at least 7 years that I've heard use the term pyramid of sound beside myself.
Yeah,
For those of you curious, look up some John Philip Sousa orchestration books, and you'll learn all about pyramid of sound. And what was that guy who wrote that light blue book about this exact thing? Schiffner? No. I'll look it up sometime. It'll come to me. But yeah, that sound already gets you to those like super, super low effects. And if we were to take what we hear normally, this is like with my kind of typical, just a little bit of distortion stuff going on here, we can get these nice crunchy chords, which sounds like metal. But if you were to take all that distortion off, this is one of my favorite things to do, is to play metal riffs with no effects whatsoever. It just sounds like this. Which is like, it's fine. It still sounds like a groovy kind of Steppenwolf, sort of groove, but there's just not that much like grit to it. You take that sound of what you're getting there, and what we're basically doing is we're applying multiple gain stages and overdrive or hard clipping distortion to our signal. And I'm not going to even remotely get into the weeds of like what that is exactly today. There are many videos you can find on YouTube when you talk about gain stages, different kinds of overdrives, distortions, soft clipping, hard clipping, etc. But just know that it basically intensifies, it kind of adds some extra harmonic chewiness, might be the word for it, to your tone. And of course, it makes it just sort of break out of that more acoustic sound. And so if I apply a little bit of distortion, we get this sort of sound. And if I increase my gain even more, we get this kind of sound. And that's where you get that insanely like strong sound from the start.
Wall of noise that feels like it's reverberating around your entire head.
Yeah. And then the second part of this intro, because we obviously hear those like big fat, like literally the first two notes of this entire song is just, but then we hear that next thing. And can you actually, if you don't mind, Drew, can you go back and play, I'll play it here in a second, but can you play those first, like 3 or 4 measures? And I'm curious what you guys think is being done to get this other sound in each bar. What is that? How are they getting that?
It's way down on the little strings.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, right. Whenever you see someone on the TV doing that, they're pulling way up on the thing and going wee like that. It's a Wii U chord.
Perfect. Yeah. So now the obvious next question is, Drew, being the expert of Wii U chords, how do I play a Wii U chord?
You slide your hands all the way up the neck of the guitar.
That's part of it.
I bend the string. You literally bend it.
I was on the right track. We're getting all in the right realm already.
Okay.
So it's like when they're playing violin and they make the vibrato sound, they're literally moving the string back and forth as opposed to up and onto the neck or off the neck, and then you move it like side to side on the neck.
So yet again, Ira's just teeing me up perfectly for all the discussion topics we're going to talk about with guitar today. So what Ira just mentioned is vibrato, which is like on a violin as well. You can do it on pretty much any string instrument, any typical string instrument. And vibrato is where generally you're going to have your finger go back and forth between being slightly lower down your neck, fretboard, whatever instrument it is, and slightly higher. On something like a violin or like a cello where there are no frets, it's way easier to hear this because wherever your point of contact is makes a way bigger difference than on a fretted instrument. But on a fretted instrument, if I play a little bit here, I've got all my distortion stuff turned down. If I play just like a 12th fret G on the G string, if I play it without moving anything else, I just get this. Nothing weird, right? And actually, that's a G flat because I'm drop tuned right now. But if I kind of rock my finger back and forth a little bit, we get, and you can hear a very slight little and vibrato is literally just the pitch going up and down and up and down. The other way you can do this on a guitar or on really any string instrument, but it's typically on fretted ones that you would do it, is a literal bend. And what a bend is instead of going laterally from like where the nut to the bridge on the guitar is, in that direction, you're literally bending the string so it kind of makes like a bow and arrow bows shape. So I could just go.
Yeah.
And all that is basically you're just making the string tighter, even though it's not like changing the length of it for where you are, but it's tightening the string, making it more taut. And if I make something tighter, will it sound lower or higher?
Higher. That's a point.
Yeah, it's going to be higher. And so to start with what we're getting in this first sound is we're just basically getting this sort of like, right? If I play, again, there's no distortion on right now, but it would just be. But there's still something kind of missing, right? Like it doesn't quite sound as intense. Even if I like turn my distortion back on, I'll put on the really heavy stuff. And if I play that, there's still something kind of missing. It's not as crunchy as it could be. Can you guys make a guess of like why it's not as the other versions we hear?
You don't have the scream of sin behind you.
Why not? There's something missing. Where's that scream of sin? Where's the drunken anger of Jecht coming through my guitar?
Such a better answer than what I was gonna say. It'll wiggle your fingers more.
There's more stuff needed. Are you guys giving up? Do you not know what's happening here?
Scream of sin is the best answer we're gonna come up with.
Yes, I put my cell phone with a pre-recorded message from Sin itself, and I just play it through the pickups. No, what it is if I play it a little slowly, let's see if you guys can kind of figure out what's going on here. So the first way I played it was just like so. And that's just basically one note, right? But if I play it the way it sounds on the recording, and you'll hear it in a lot of other songs by other bands as well, we hear this. Do you have any guesses what you're hearing?
It's another note.
There's another note happening. So what's actually happening when you hear this very typical metal, and even like way back to like the 70s and 80s from like Allman Brothers would do this, is what we're hearing is there's one string that I'm playing that bend on. So in this case, the exact notes in the drop E flat, drop D flat tuning is I'm playing on the 13th fret of the B string, and we're just going up a whole step. But then I'm also playing on the E string on the 10th fret, the same note that I'm bending to. So if I play that note by itself, hey, that sounds kind of familiar. And if I bend this one again, so all we're doing is playing essentially two notes that are a whole step away from each other, and we're creeping one into the other one until they're playing in unison. So if I do it really slowly here, it sounds like this. I'll play it extra slow so you can hear the kind of lock-in moment. But because you're hearing that high one the whole time, that E string one is always there, your ear locks onto it, and it sounds like this very guttural, screaming, impure rage sound. And that's literally all it is. Not all, like every single time you hear it in every song ever, but generally speaking, that's all that trick is. And it's one of the easiest things to do once you've learned how to like just bend strings. You have one finger hold the goal pitch, you have one or two other fingers bend the one below it, and then you can just all day long just, and it's just like part of playing guitar, part of playing metal. So you put it all together and you get this awesome etc. And that's all there is to it. It sounds amazingly insane and like heavy, but it's actually one of the easiest things to play on guitar once you know how to do it.
That's cool.
Man, I could have been a good guitar player if I had you around as my teacher about 15 years ago.
But of course, no teacher will be like, all right, lesson 2. We're gonna like start bending the strings and playing these sick metal riffs. No, that's like way down the road.
Still over here on my Bob Dylan chords. All right, do we want to listen to the next bit?
Yeah, let's keep going. Let's get some lyrics going.
Well, stop us there real quick. I know the melody is about to change, and also there's enough lyrical content there that we kind of have to dive into it. But also, just from a sonic standpoint, it's one thing, Ryan, to hit my ears with everything you just said. All that stuff you just mentioned, and the bendy chords and all the crunchy metal stuff, but to then come in with guttural screaming vocals sure is a choice, and one that I'm surprised, because I really don't like most screaming metal, and I don't know, maybe it's just because this was in Final Fantasy and I'm giving it a pass. We'll never know, but for whatever reason, this doesn't offend my senses the way a lot of screamo metal does, but it sure is jarring and abrupt to hear in a Final Fantasy game.
Right? I know we talked about it on a recent episode, but just like that first impression that you guys got when you first fired up 10 for the first time, and this song it's like one of the first songs you hear, and it's one of the very last songs you hear, nowhere in the middle. What was your first impression when you heard, like, you fired this up and there's like the nice flowy, like, play online menu screen, and you kind of walk around a little bit and you hear like the prelude and everything, and then you see Titus chilling out in the blitzball pool and this song starts playing? Like, what was your first impression?
Yeah, it's jarring. It's obviously deliberately an other world. I think one of the things it does really well is say we're in a different space here. I mean, 7 is one thing and 8 is its own thing, and 9 goes kind of backward. But this is a very deliberately, we're doing something drastically different. Now, I'm not sure it really is drastically different compared to other Final Fantasies, but again, it's setting itself up for its own universe, and I think it does it well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always interested when Final Fantasy can reference itself or break tradition with itself on purpose, right? It's almost self-referential to be like, what have we never done before? Well, we've never done this. And I can imagine had, social media existed in the days of Final Fantasy X, there would have been an immediate outcry about this, especially if it was like the first hour, they just released this part on demo or something. And people go, why is there screaming metal in my Final Fantasy? Right? It's like, but again, to put it like you said at the very beginning, is a deliberate attempt to say some stuff's going to be different here. We're really going to try to jar you, especially at the beginning of this. We're about to dive into the lyrical content, but there's a lot of crossing the threshold, Joseph Campbell or Alice Wonderland, down the rabbit hole we go. What happens during this cutscene, and we should probably issue a spoiler warning now, by the way.
Massively.
Yeah, by the time we get into all this, we're just going to have to talk about everything that happens in this game. Right? Titus is being taken by this giant monster to another plane of existence. And so, it's extremely dramatic, but it's also our way of, or their way as storytellers of telling us, the audience, forget what you know, forget what you think you know, come with us on a journey.
Definitely. And something that came to my mind when you were talking about, like, why does this not avert me? When I fire this up and I see it in a Final Fantasy game, why am I not instantly like, oh, I don't like this kind of music, at the time that I played it? Why do I still like it? There's a term I heard a couple of years back called trust equity that I think does a lot of heavy lifting here, where, because I assume at the time you knew enough about Final Fantasy, you'd played it enough and knew that you liked it enough, that when you heard and saw this scene, your trust equity in the creators of Final Fantasy was so high, or rather theirs was so high with you, that you were just like, I trust that whatever you're going to do with this and wherever we're going to go with this, crazy music is going to be worth the payoff, worth the atmosphere, the story setting, whatever the case is. And they're kind of cashing in on that trust equity. It was also the time where, this was the first PS2 game that they did, and they were trying to push the boundaries of, we're no longer doing the Final Fantasy IX style of like medieval things and fantasy in that regard. We're doing our own thing going forward. Look at these cool water effects we have in the game now, and Yuna dancing on the lily pads, Yeah. And it really shows here. But they did a really good job, I think, of making it like not unbearable to listen to for those of us who aren't a fan of like screamo type music,
Yeah, absolutely.
So basically, strangely enough, the guy singing all the vocals in this, it's a guy named Bill Muir, and he was in a straight edge hardcore punk band called Till I Die. And oddly enough, the band itself, from what I've found, they did not exist very long. It was a relatively short-lived, couple of years band, but they toured Japan right around the time when Final Fantasy X would have been in production and released, about 98 to 2002, according to what I'm finding on some various like wiki fandom type pages. And somehow randomly they had a demo tape or a demo CD, whatever, that just somehow magically made its way to Square Enix. And someone was like, hey, we've got a guy that is literally here in Japan who can sing English lyrics in this like style that we're going for. You guys want to get him in here? And they got him somehow. I don't know for sure. I looked up some stuff and I tried to find something and I can't find anything for certain anywhere. But later in the song, we're going to hear this part where there's someone doing more just like spoken word stuff, kind of through a radio sound or through a megaphone kind of sound. Yeah. And for the longest time, I thought it was like Braska or it was someone else in the game just doing another line. But I think it's actually the same vocalist, Bill Muir, because I can't find anything that ties them together. And the vocalist sound, or I guess the narrator in that sense, they don't quite sound like Braska or Jekt or anyone else. So I don't know if you guys know something I don't know, but I think it's also Bill just talking through a lo-fi, filter of some kind.
Interesting. When we get to that part, I was going to say, I've always thought that was Oren speaking there.
Or Oren, yeah. I thought it was Oren or Braska talking.
But I hope it's just him, because that's great too. It's just like he's taking the distortion and all the pedals off of his own voice and just like clean vocal just for the speaking stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are we hearing? Where are these lyrics? Take us away.
So we've got to start with a really granular look at the first sentence. We begin with "Go now," right? I think, one, that's just a great way to start a song and to start a song that's about the beginning of an adventure. But now I think is also a really interesting word to use in reference to this story. When is now? What is now? Where is Zanarkand? Who are you? So now, like, just even that in and of itself, setting you in a place and time, okay, you're in the now. But what that actually means for Tidus in this dream world of Zanarkand will be, challenged throughout. After that, we get, so the full phrase is "Go now if you want it." If you want suggests choice, right? So that's going to be a running theme throughout the story and throughout the lyrics. Go now if you want it. And now, gentlemen, we have to have the most boring modern conversation on pronouns. There's not going to be anything particularly controversial about this or political. I could try to make it. Trust me. You've seen me on the internet. I'll do it. But it is going to be a very interesting recurring pronoun in these lyrics. Normally, when you use the pronoun it, you have introduced a subject, a noun, already. What does it refer to? Go now if you want it is our opening phrase, which is just tasty and delicious. And then we have "an other world awaits you." So a couple of things here. Otherworld is spelled one word, otherworld. There's three different ways this could have been. It could have been otherworld, two words, or it could have been Chrono Cross style, another world. Starting with an A. I think they very deliberately chose Otherworld because it is the most specific of the three. It suggests it's the title or the name of this place. It's an other world. It's not just some other world, and it's not just another world. Did everybody follow that?
Yeah, you could definitely write like a semester paper about the what's the word? Not the minutia, but the choice of another world, or another world, or throw some hyphens in there, another world, and have a very different like meaning to all of those. Ira, what's your take?
Yeah, I like that it is an other world as opposed to another world or an other world. like you said, Drew, it implies that it is a specific other world, as opposed to just any old other world, as we have all experienced in the past.
And that phrase ends with, "Another world awaits you," bringing us another very important question. Who is this song addressing? This is a song, actually, it gives us two questions. Who's the speaker, and who is you? I have a couple.
It's you, Yevon. Duh.
Well done. So I have some thoughts, but do either of you want to throw thoughts on speaker and addressee and Otherworld awaits you?
Now's probably a good time for me to say that even though in the opening crawl for this game, Titus says, "Listen to my story," or like, "This is my story," something like that. And then Oren in the opening scene says something like, "This is how your story begins. Follow me," something like that. I'm of the full camp that this is Yuna's story. And we are using Titus as the audience surrogate, which is done very well, by the way. And so perhaps it's Another World awaits Yuna, and she does not know about the story, like the other world of what the faith and the church and stuff are doing in this game. And that's like a triple entendre of what's awaiting Yuna later. But in this case, I think it's like far less deep than what we could possibly dive into. I think it's literally just a matter of like, hey, there's something crazy out there. We're going to get sucked up into the giant sea monster like cyclone up over there and just follow us. Don't ask questions, just follow us.
Yeah, I see the speaker as being sort of the faith, inviting, or, I mean, they make it sound like a choice, insisting that Titus go on his adventure. But also, both Final Fantasies 1 and 6 at the end invoke you, the player, the audience. And this feels to me like that. You are going to come with us on, we're presenting you one world, but actually it's another world that you're going to go to. And so it's inviting our heroes into a world of peculiar fashion and unrelenting sadness.
Yeah. In my notes for this, I wrote down you, I think definitely references Titus here at the very beginning, because he's literally being transported to another world, and other world does await him. I think is absolutely referencing Yuna. And I think, to give a spoiler, as we go throughout the song, you will come to represent Yuna more and more. So by the end, it's definitely just about her, I think. Yeah. And I wrote down what Ira just said as a note. I think you references you, the player, you, the audience, are about to be transported to another world. And particularly in that Final Fantasy way, where it's important that you are the hand of fate guiding these characters to their eventual destiny, which brings us back to that "if you want it" phrase. How much of a choice do these people have?
Yeah, there's even some parts, if I recall, it's been a while since I played 10. It's been at least 2 or 3 years since my last playthrough. But there's even a part somewhere relatively, is like somewhere in the middle of the game, where Oren basically tells Titus, like, "Hey, it's your choice. You can come with us if you want, or we can just leave you here on the road and you just are on your own." There's some scene like that somewhere, isn't there, that I'm remembering?
Yeah. That definitely happens. And so then my final note on this opening bit is just that it's, I think, very obviously mirroring Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. This is a call to adventure and a bit of crossing the threshold. Final Fantasy likes to use the hero's journey a lot, sometimes mixing and mashing. And I think they're doing both things here, where it's a literal call to adventure. Go now if you want it. Right. But then there's also this, you're going to cross the threshold. You're going to go into an other world, and then some of the stuff that awaits you on the other side. The other lyric that we get here in this first bit that I don't have, don't worry, I don't have that many notes on every single lyric.
And you recorded for 3.5 hours.
Seriously. Is "don't you give up on it. You bite the hand that feeds you," right? And so I think that's very obviously about perseverance through some of these goals. But particularly, do either of you have a read on "you bite the hand that feeds you"?
immediately I think of the Nine Inch Nails song, The Hand That Feeds, which is an absolute banger. But as far as like what this is referencing, I'm curious if they just threw it in there because it's a really cool metal sounding phrase that also ends with you, which by the way, I just realized they rhymed with you.
They sure did get away with that, didn't they?
Oh, that just eats me up inside. But anyways, as far as what this might refer to in the game, I don't really have any hard take. I mean, I'm assuming it's just because of like Titus's father's role in the game. Maybe he's the hand that feeds, even though he hasn't been in his life for like 8 or 9 years. I have no idea.
I worry about sometimes reading too much into certain lyrics. Sometimes it's just about how it sounds. It's the poetry of it. It's the image it evokes. But I can't help but get into the religious, political aspects of it. This world is built upon the recurring cycle of sin. And that's how the government functions in a lot of ways. And the government provides for the people, right? Ostensibly. So if you disrupt our system, how are you going to be supported? If you disrupt our system of constantly destroying you, how will we continue to give you bread and circuses? Ah,
yes. Bread and circuses.
Well, as a lyricist, I like reading way too deep into this stuff. I put 2.5 pages of notes on these silly lyrics. And both of you hit both of the things that I wrote down anyway. Yeah, Bite the Hand That Feeds is about the father. The father, both again, Titus's, and Yuna's father, and having to reject the tradition that came before you, which of course includes the religion. I think that applies a lot more to Yuna ultimately having to bite the hand that feeds, the religion, the way of life, rejecting the way of life that she was brought up in, that she is a paragon of, supposed to be a leader of, and ends up killing her own god, and so I said spoilers, right? So, well, it's Final Fantasy. So
yeah, it's Final Fantasy. That's always the final chapter is you kill a god, right?
Right. But yeah, so I think that's what the Bite the Hand that feeds is about.
Yeah, the only other thing that came to mind there, as you were talking about the Joseph Campbell Hero's Journey stuff, is I think this is an interesting story pacing structure, because you could argue that they do the threshold crossing first and then the call to adventure actually happens, because it's pretty much like, what is going on? He's sucked away to the actual Xanarkand, and then shortly after you meet him and they're on the bridge and whatnot, and then he's like, oh, by the way, here's why you're here, here's your call to adventure, take it or leave it. So it's kind of cool how they actually flip that and they put one step before the other than what you normally see.
Yeah, even the refusal of the call that they put after all that too. Yeah, it's I love when they do stuff like that.
I want to say one more thing about the lyrics. I like that, like you were talking about, it's sort of that guttural screamo metal sound that I don't listen to typically, but I like that they do it because it's the lyrics function as a sort of prophecy, and Final Fantasy has dealt with prophecy before. But in this particular case, it's almost like it's putting it in a distorted form so as to hide what it is, because it basically gives away a lot of the game. It gives away a lot of the story in the lyrics if you understand it. And, it's the beginning of the game, so you don't even know what to expect yet. And they kind of hide it behind that, making it song lyrics and how much do you want to read into it. So the fact that they put their prophecy in song lyrics that are then further distorted, I think is particularly clever.
Yeah, I agree.
You stole one of my notes from later.
Ira is just the king of, I know what you want to talk about.
Right.
I'm going to do it for you.
Ahead of it. Well, then let's listen to more music then. Short section, and then we get into some repeating, but that weird little bit changes everything up a little bit, and it's interesting.
Yeah, there's a cool little thing that they do here with, like, on the music side of it. We've talked before on the podcast about how frequently you will end a phrase on a dominant chord or on a tonic chord. Dominant is basically the thing that sounds like it's going to go to something else, and tonic is like your home base of the key already. But this one, I'll play it here real quick. It ends on a part of the scale that doesn't normally happen in like typical like rock music, and it ends there when your home bass key is there. What that is, for those of us at home who are curious, that's a flat 6 is where we're ending that, which is typical for a heavy metal minor setting. But I just love how they kind of do that little like walk up the scale, and then they just end it on, is it on upbeat even? Yeah, it's like on the upbeat on the flat 6. And it's a very like tense way to just stop a phrase before you start into the next one, because of two reasons. They're ending on an upbeat, like in the middle of the bar. It's like the 3 and I think, da 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 da, and then you drop back in. But also, it's just weird to just linger on until you get back to the actual part. If they ended it on the 5 chord, like on the actual dominant, like something like this, that sounds way more like a natural tension resolution. 6s and 3s are what are called your mediant and submediant in music theory. Ooh. And it's very weird. It's very unusual in classical music to end a phrase that way. But in metal music, they do it all the time. So for whatever Uematsu studied and whatever background he had in metal music while he was writing this, he knew what not to do as much as he knew what to do, because he had to break his own like training to say, oh, I'm going to end this weird little like, you know, hiccup phrase on a flat 6 instead of a 5 or a 1, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And it reminds me of that great bit of Aaron Sorkin writing on the West Wing. Ira says, Toby, you stop talking in the middle of a...
Yep.
It's the music, right? It's like, yeah. It's a musical version of it. And it's just tense, isn't it? When you just leave it there and you go, you want that resolution.
Yes, there's a whole discussion to be had about the art of using silence in music, because the rests and the silences are just as important as the notes themselves.
I tend to associate that with Studio Ghibli and Joe Hisaishi, and that's such a tonally different musical palette there.
Slightly less distortion. Joe
Hisaishi doing heavy metal would be an interesting exercise, I think.
Right. So a couple thoughts on the lyrical content here. We go through this fairly quickly. We get all alone, cold fields you wander. I find it interesting that they write all alone, considering for most of the story, both Tidus and Yuna are surrounded by friends, very rarely in Final Fantasy, but I think that's more a feeling of isolation, probably.
Yeah, it's like just kind of a generic term, maybe even for like when he first plops down into that ocean and he's just like literally all alone and cold. Like literally he's trying to find something to make fire with very, very soon when he gets teleported away. Fields was probably just an artistic choice.
He's also sort of the fish out of water, and so he's surrounded by people, but he is alone in that way, and so is she, because she's the one on her death march, and none of the rest of them are, or one of them is, but we haven't decided who yet.
Yeah.
It's also interesting because this idea of cold, there are going to be several elements introduced here, and so that's the first one that we get. I think cold could also just mean calm, dark, and quiet. Also, there's a lot of those. Like, so we have Mount Gagazet is also a cold place, but like the Thunder Plains, more of a, there's a lot of interesting ways in which they do even make the group feel kind of isolated. There's a lot of those moments of calm and quiet. So I thought that was an interesting choice, but not nearly as much as the next lyric. Hey guys, memories of it cloud your sight. What's it?
That's a great question, because it could refer to the memories of where Tidus himself came from. Memories of it could be what you think the real world you're in right now's past was. It could be just generally your worldview of what you think is right and wrong. There's a lot of just like confusion is basically what they're trying to say, is like you are confused and we know you're confused.
And the modern world's view of Xanarkand and what was is absolutely clouded by, again, political factors, not to mention the living memory spirits that have been encased in stone/ice.
Right.
Spoilers.
I think we're there. So memories of it And I wrote down all of that: memories of Xanarkin, memories of the past, memories of your dads, both dads, and memories of the original goals that you set out on this adventure of a pilgrimage might cloud your sight to the real goal in the end, which is ending the need for any pilgrimages ever again. So memories of it cloud your sight, fills your dreams, disturbs your slumber.
Now we get into the heavy stuff of like, what's this game actually about?
We're going to be here a while, aren't we?
Goodness gracious.
Okay, I'll just tell you this. My notes for this, I just wrote down in all caps, dreams. And then I wrote, what do dreams dream?
Do dream droids dream of electric dreams?
Exactly right.
They dream of extreme sports stars, apparently.
Apparently. Really good athletes who can save the world.
Yeah, this is a cool line, though. Fills your dreams, disturbs your slumber, because, again, we could talk about it for an hour, but a lot of the game is about the dreams Anarchind. It's about what the faith are still dreaming, how they're brought into the present day Xanarchind through the summons and all these other weird, ways that they do this kind of stuff. There's a lot to dive into in just that one line, but I like how they say disturbs your slumber, because it's literally saying the person from the dreams, what fills your dreams, Titus, is going to come to disturb someone's slumber. And they're literally bringing Titus to stop that cycle of the dreams, basically, even if he himself might vanish as a result.
Yeah.
Also, Drew, back to your point about it leaning on what it's done before. Final Fantasy VIII had a lot to do with dreams. Final Fantasy VII had a lot to do with memories. And Crystal Chronicles is in there somewhere also. So,
and we're also on the team. And this final line of this phrase is really curious to me after all that dreams and slumber stuff. Lost your way, a fallen knight. And knight is spelled with a K. I triple checked this on multiple translations and all this stuff. So it refers to a person. And I have a hard time seeing either Titus or Yuna as a fallen knight.
Yeah, Ira, you go first. I have a strong guess of who they're referring to, because there's only two other people I can imagine it referring to.
Well, I'm going to try to name them now. Jecht and Oron.
Ding, ding, ding.
Jecht is fallen just because he's a prick from the outset, but also now he's the monster. Oron is fallen in that he was like a stand-up member of the church, and now I almost swore. And now he hates those dudes, and he is fallen in that way. So societally, he's fallen, but also, again, spoilers, he's dead.
Yeah, big spoilers. That's my opinion as well, is that it's Oren, primarily because of those two things, is like literally a fallen knight, as in he was basically killed in a very late game scene. We see a flashback to it, but also his departure from the teachings. And he doesn't lead on to it very strong. Like he does, but it's like very like surreptitiously. It's very sneakily said without outright saying anything, but he is the one that's basically like the equivalent of an oathbreaker paladin, where he's like, all right, that was my way, but no more. I am now on a different march.
All right, let's hear the next bit. Another one awaits you. 1,000 years ready. The other one, it takes you. What?
Rip.
Hey, Ryan.
Uh-huh.
What's that?
So I have a guess of what you're referring to. Can you point out the exact thing you're talking about?
Yeah. It's the part that goes wah, 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 wah.
So the simplest part of that, it's basically just, honestly, it's just like roots and fifths for the most part. If I remember the exact part it's playing at. And what they're doing there, the part that I was actually, before we recorded, I tried to like prepare a little bit, is there's something, if you listen to it, it's not as strong in this recording, but if you hear other metal bands, you'll hear it all the time, of something called a pinch harmonic. Do either of you know what a pinch harmonic is?
can I have stood next to a person who said that phrase and then proceeded to do it? And I went, ooh, that sounds cool.
Ira?
No.
So I'm going to potentially embarrass myself. There might be a lot of editing on Drew's side before I can get a good one here. But here's a very simple way of what we're listening to. There's a little spot where they end one of the phrases there, and you kind of hear this screaming sound, doom, doom, ba, doom, ba, doom, wah, and you hear this crazy high sound. In most instruments, and it's easily shown on a string instrument, is what's called a harmonic. And the simplest way to do this on a guitar, if you play just any open string, if I play like my open B, for example, that's my open B or B flat, because I'm down tuned right now. And if I just kind of hover my finger over the 12th fret, not actually pressing it, if I just kind of hover my finger so I'm touching it but not pressing down, we get a harmonic. You can do that at different intervals that naturally occur on any string, any vibrating substance, basically. If any of you ever watched Donald Duck in Mathmagical Land in elementary school, he talks about this exact premise with like dividing a string into seconds and then into thirds and fourths, etc. If you do over like the 5th or the 7th frets, you'll also get harmonics playing out of those. But what a pinch harmonic is, it's when you're already playing something where you're pressing down higher up on the fretboard, so you have essentially an already shortened string. If I play, for example, that 8th fret there, the open string is here, and then the actual played note is way up there. And then you take that new string length you've created and you apply a harmonic to that instead. And I'm going to make a fool of myself if you're trying to play this, but basically you go from getting the normal sound like this into using either your thumb or a finger or the pick itself to make a new harmonic after you play the first note. So you kind of get this. I'll get a good one. Hang on. There it was. It's really hard to get right. And I guarantee for those of us at home, find a YouTube video that's just how to do pinch harmonics. You'll find someone way better than me at making them. But that's what that weird screaming sound is that you randomly hear sometimes. It's just someone playing really high and then also hitting a harmonic with their finger or the pick as they're playing it. Not easy to do. I've never mastered it. I knew a kid in high school who could do it on an acoustic guitar at will, practically. He was an expert of these things, but that is definitely not something you're going to learn in the first 3 lessons of your guitar journey.
Yeah, nor any of mine.
I also want to point out that this part feels to me like the going forward part of the song, and it reminds me a lot of Final Fantasy V, because bum 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 ba bum 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 ba ba sounds a lot like bum 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 bagadee. So I feel like there's a parallel there to the going forward adventure part.
Definitely. It's charging, it's straight 8th notes for the most part. It's got that push behind it.
Our lyrical content is hold now, aim is steady. Anybody got an idea on aim is steady?
Shooting at Sin from the harpoon guns? I have no, or blitzball, I don't know.
Hey, there's one of the things I wrote down. A blitzball player's got to have steady aim, right? But I have one, I think it's a bit of a stretch. I do think this gets into reaching deep into the lyrics or whatever. But if I was to come up with an alternate phrase for hold now, aim steady, I might also say, don't cry.
No.
Yeah.
Keep your aim steady. So that's all I had for that one. Also, eventually, Yuna will get guns, but I don't think that had anything to do with it.
There's one line here as a spoiler for the sequel game that we didn't even know we were making yet.
Right. And this one, I don't think could be much more straightforward, though I do like the word takes. We get 1,000 years. You ready? The other world, it takes you. This time it does not await you. It takes you.
Yeah, very literal. Literally, you're going to feel like you went 1,000 years into the future, even though he doesn't, but that's a whole other thing. And the other world just simply, zoom, you're there.
All right, let's do the next bit.
Yeah, the next part's cool because now we actually hear the thing that was popularized by the Green Day album American Idiot, where they would like sing through a megaphone, and we get a very similar thing here in a voice that I think is again, I think it's Bill Muir singing or speaking this part as well, but it kind of sounds like it could be Orin or Braska in like one of the little like memory sphere things. Let's give it a listen.
Into the sand and the dust.
guttural, raw.
Man, that's cool. And again, another thing that I didn't know was like Green Day, the way they do it, there's a very like thematic, he's just like addressing Congress or whatever, right? He's like standing up on his soapbox. A lot of times I don't love spoken dialogue in my music either. So but for whatever reason, this always worked for me.
That's right. The Green Day one, he's like, the representative from California has the floor or something like that. Yeah. But what are we hearing? What's in the background of that like spoken word section?
More rockin' tunes.
Well said, I thought. Yeah, I don't know. They changed the riff up a little bit on us, but I don't know exactly how. I was listening for it, but getting lost in all of there's so much incredible noise happening.
I mean, like the lyrics, like what's he saying during that spoken section?
Oh. Well, so this is interesting, right? So we get go now into the sand and the dust and the sky. So a repetition of that go now, call to action, the sand and the dust and the sky. We've got more elements and more locales. And I think this is the trials and ordeals section of Joseph Campbell's part of the journey, right? They're describing that you're going to face challenges on your journey. And I think that's also a callback to Final Fantasy I. We don't have all of the elements here, but it's the earth, the water, and the wind that are out of balance at the beginning of Final Fantasy I, right? So it's kind of a callback to that.
And in this part, like the sand in the sky, I can put pretty like 1-to-1 correlations of places they see in 10. But the dust, do either of you have like any guesses of what the dust might, if it is referring to something literal, what that might be?
It could be the desert where the Albed live, but sometimes just earth, sea, and sky is the three locales we can exist in.
Yeah, sure. That's all I got.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next line is the only one that I think I might fall down on the side of it being largely gibberish, and unless either of you have something here. Go now, better to plan than to do or to die.
I have a different version in front of me. Mine says, go now, no better plan than to do or to die.
Okay. I'm still lost on what precisely that means. It feels directed at Yuna for some reason, but I don't have I'm not sure what that means.
I'm guessing this is actually a pretty 1-to-1 of the scene that if you're like me and it took you 20 times to kill Lady Yunalesca, you saw this cutscene over and over and over where Auron basically says, now is the time to decide. Now you can either stand up and fight or live with the pain of regret, like whatever that speech you give is.
Yeah.
That's straight up this, where it's like, hey, there's no better plan. You either do or you die. Like you're going to potentially not have a great result one way or another, but you got to do something.
Yeah. Fair enough. Pretty straightforward. I love that this next bit is, as Ira mentioned earlier, and still from my notes, just a straight up big ass spoiler. It's just out of context. So you have no idea what they're talking about because it would sound like gibberish if you don't know. But it says, free me, pray to the faith in the face of the light. That might be the most straightforward line in the entire thing once you have the context. It's like, this is what you do to win. You free the dream and the faith by waking them,
and they all have to sing a song at the end. Let's not forget.
Right. And then the final bit of that is feed me, which is an interesting inverse of free me. Fill me with sin. Now get ready to fight.
Ooh, goosebumps. Very, very yin and yang sort of approach where it's like you might be kind of like the paladin for glory, but yet it's the speaker here. I'm going to assume that it's Auron saying this, or an impersonation of Auron where he's like, in order to actually do what's right, I have to have that like vengeful spirit fed to me and kind of give in to the sinful urge.
I also think the repetition of the phrase, you know you will, or they break it up in a lot of different ways. But again, that gets back to our question of choice. And first, the other world awaited us. Then it took us. And now there's this question of, well, you know you will. And so, again, we have two kind of people faced with inevitabilities in this story. Yuna and her inevitable pilgrimage, right? And then Tidus maybe trapped by fate. The only way out, the only way to save everybody from the spiral of sadness and darkness is to sacrifice himself. So they both march toward an inevitable sacrifice. And so this idea that you will make the sacrifice. Do you have a choice? Maybe you do, but because you're a good person, you've already made your choice.
Yep. You could like definitely pull a lot of that out of all of this stuff here and twist it in whatever way strikes your fancy. And they also, in this whole section here, for those of us at home listening, if you're listening to what we just played, the part that Drew just queued up for us, there might be some parts where you're like, wait a minute, I don't remember that part being in the song. The version of Otherworld that plays in the opening scenes of the game, where it is just like essentially one time through, and then they either loop it or they go to a different song. I forget exactly how it works. You hear basically one full time of the song proper. But when you do it at one of the end game boss fights, they play a slightly different version that has some levels changed, and it loops and it cuts out a couple of those in between sections in the second half. So if you're hearing this and you're like, wait a minute, this part doesn't sound that familiar, chances are you haven't heard it more than once ever in your life if you've only played 10, once.
Another way to think about the you will, the inevitability of it is a cycle. This has happened before. And a similar way to Final Fantasy 1, the time loop, there's a prophecy at least as much because the time has looped over and over again. We've seen this happen before. We know what has happened in the past. It's going to happen again, unless, of course, we break that vicious cycle.
All right, last bit.
Last bit.
So in this last bit, we get more dreams. Dreams, they rip asunder, don't you know? And the other world, it hates you this last time. I think that's just being a metal song, right?
Yep. Very, very dream theater, very pull me under sort of stuff.
Dreams that rip asunder could be aeons that you can control in combat. Those dreams absolutely rip asunder when asked to.
I like that. It's not,
Yeah.
not just the Xanarkand angle. I enjoy that. The best I could come up with, the other world it hates you, is that ultimately Spira does reject Titus. He does not belong there, and so he cannot stay there. I don't know, it'd be a stretch to say Spira hates him, but
it does want to maintain its status quo, right?
Yeah.
The government aspects, the sort of theocracy aspects, absolutely do not want things to change, and he is an agent of change.
Yep, that's actually a good point.
I like that. Our second to last one, I'm going to need some help, boys. Free now, ride up on it, up to the heights it takes you.
That's an airship.
I wrote down airship question mark.
There's something going up. My only guess here is that it's like that one of those final scenes when you're approaching Sin proper. They're on I always forget which one's which. Is it the Fahrenheit is the one in 10? The ship?
Oh, I forgot the name of it.
There's the Celsius and the Fahrenheit. I think it's the Fahrenheit is the one in 10.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but like you're on that ship, you fight against a couple other things, and then you eventually go straight to like Sin itself. That's my guess. Up to the heights it takes you, and that height is going into Sin. Ugh.
That was my best guess as well. I also think it's interestingly ironic because the final height, the soaring epic climax of this story is actually Titus jumping down off of the airship. It's not an ascension. It's actually a descension, which is interesting.
Yeah, that scene just rips me up inside every single time.
Every time. And even though the last line of the song is the same as the first, I actually interpret it in a completely different way. We get go now if you want it. An Otherworld awaits you.
So there's that loop that Ira just mentioned, how we're going from, either one cycle of sin from the start to the end to the start, or however they're manipulating the dream Xanarkin that Titus is from, which is, by the way, that's a question I've always kind of had, like story-wise. Is the dream Xanarkin in their own little stuck time loop of 20 years over and over again, or how does that work exactly?
So like the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 2, you said you never got past 1, so I assumed you didn't get to
Nope.
2. That starts you with all those kids in whatever the name of that town is, kind of reliving the same week or whatever it is. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know the mechanics of it. That would be but before I say anything, do you have anything else on those or the final read on what this line might mean a second time, Ira? Or a final time, even?
I think it's, again, sort of a false choice, but because, like you said, he is such a good guy, he wants to do it. Once he's presented with a situation that he could maybe help fix, of course he wants to help. Yeah, I think that's basically all I've got.
So what I have, again, referring to Joseph Campbell, the final 2 stages of the hero's journey are resurrection and the return with the elixir. In Final Fantasy X, Tidus is not resurrected, or rather, in a way, he's sent. Everyone is sent. There's a resurrection, and he goes away. Go now, if you want it. And Yuna returns with the elixir, an Otherworld, which is a world without sin.
I never thought of it that way. It makes sense, though.
Either I'm way over interpreting all of it, and I just spent about 25 to 30 minutes of all of our lives on some stuff I made up in my head.
No, I like that, because we've experienced other games where we start with the world of balance, Final Fantasy VI, and we go to the world of ruin. But this game starts essentially in the world of ruin. So does Final Fantasy I, and you have to achieve that world of balance, which becomes then the new world. We spent an episode talking about the 2 worlds and the allegory of the cave, and you start essentially in a world of falsehood, and you have to work to emerge into a world of truth. And that's we cited several Final Fantasy games that literally have 2 worlds, and in a way, Xanarkin is the other world, the false Xanarkin, the dream Xanarkin, but we achieve a more balanced other world by going on the adventure.
Solid. So the actual lyricist for this, and I don't know for sure if he was the one that actually wrote the lyrics or if he just translated them, because the lyricist is credited to Alex Smith, or Alexander O. Smith, and he worked as a translator for a lot of the Final Fantasy, Square Enix kind of stuff around that era, and he's listed everywhere I can find as the lyricist. I don't know if perhaps Uematsu or someone else actually wrote the lyrics and then he translated them to English and they used that as his credit for it. I can't really find a good paper trail on if he was, again, just a translator or if he actually was the lyricist on this. But he's the one credited with writing these lyrics. I think that generally, if you look at the lyrics from a very broad spectrum, they accomplish 2 goals really nicely. One, they set up this whole concept of the other world and describing roughly the story beats that they take. But also, it does a really good job of allowing itself to have these guttural, just sort of sounds. When he's there's a part where it's just the word fight over and over again, and Bill's just singing fight, fight, fight. It's something you don't hear in any other Final Fantasy game. And I don't know where the line was, if it was a more collaborative effort, perhaps, or what. But he did a good job of making lyrics that fit well, they scan well, they read well, and they let the vocalist Bill really dig in and have something to just go all out with.
Yeah. I forgot to read my note for that part. I said this part is probably about all the fighting in the game.
Yeah, fight. Let's see what the next line is. Fight, and then fight. Fight.
A college song, right? Those college fight songs. Fight.
Oh, it is kind of right.
Hey, I've always said Titus is the cheerleader of this game, and so boom, there we go.
Boom.
Give me an S. Give me an I. Give me an N.
Oh man. So once again, we get to listen to a little bit of Black Mages, which hooray! But I will say, not one of my favorite versions of theirs. There are some things they do in this I absolutely love, and I don't hate the vocalist.
Yeah.
She's great, just not maybe for this song, but let's
I'm right there with you. It's one of those things where it's kind of a tonal whiplash where you're expecting one thing, and frequently when you do a new arrangement or a cover of a song, you either want to go full bore one way or keep it where it came, like where it started, and just do your take on it. This did both at the same time, where we're going to hear those like really strong metal instrumentations, but the vocalist sounds nothing like the original.
Man, there's some.
I love it. Oh, it's so good.
Good. No, it's a little bit like taking a drink of water, except then it's milk. It's just a little bit like, no, but once I know that it's milk and I know that it's coming, I'm like, oh, no, right, I like milk. Milk's good. Fine. I'm good here, but it takes a minute. I will say the part where she's talking as opposed to singing sounds super rad.
Yeah, that part sounds amazing. Ira, are you a fan of this one? Like, you really dig this version?
I love it. I love the extra little intro we get. I love the organ sounds that Uematsu's the keyboard player, right? I love the little extra organ sounds and riffs. I think that solo is incredible. And I really like her voice. It is definitely not the distorted voice from the game. And I think that's, the having that dichotomous, that disruption, that whatever it is, I understand that reaction, but I just think she's incredible, and I love the way she does it, and I love the way her voice, especially on that note right there at the end that we heard, just kind of soars off into the distance. I think she's incredible. I like this version a whole lot.
Yeah, this, like, the vocalist, I'll agree with you, like, to a T. I think she does a fantastic job. I love her voice in general, kind of like that power alto kind of sound. Like, I love that range. I'm gonna like disagree as far as like enjoying it though. For this, like for me, this version, it sounds to be potentially a little harsh. It sounds like the Kids Bop version of Otherworld if they made one, where it's like it's just too clean for me. It's too like she's singing the exact note. Go now, here you want it. Another world it takes you, and I'm just like, oh, but I want the other one. She's not bad. She does a great job, but it's just not the glass of milk that I'm expecting, you know.
So I had an analogy that was maybe slightly nicer. Not that you're being like you said, but I actually thought of like anime intro. I was like, this it sounds like, which I like, which isn't necessarily a put down, but cleaner is the thing. And sometimes, like, there are a lot of people that do a lot of really great covers. My wife and I sometimes watch those very silly vocal competition shows, The Voice or whatever else sometimes, because I like music. And, sometimes people will do an incredibly clean vocal of like an old Bob Dylan song or something. And I'm like, okay, but that's, you're also losing something when you do that. But if that's your preferred version, hell yeah, music is supposed to speak to every person. So like, if you like it cleaner, it's also a lot easier to hear the lyrics and understand them. So if that's what you're into.
Here's a good analogy. So are either of you Guinness drinkers? Do you enjoy a Guinness beer at all?
Sure.
Yes.
So I don't know where the folklore versus truth dividing line is on this, but over a century ago, when Guinness was being made in Ireland, there was not the most sanitary conditions, and a lot of that kind of like not bitterness, but like that acidity, like that kind of astringency and acidity that came with a Guinness. It actually came from things like animals, like rats in the factories, like falling into their brewing containers and just giving it this kind of like almost acrid or rancid sort of like taste to it, right? And over the decades, with the Industrial Revolution, with modernized, kind of like safety standards and whatnot with food, they cleaned up those things, and people actually complained that the Guinness tasted too good, and they wanted it to have that kind of like bitter, acidic sort of taste to it again. So they actually added fish oil to their recipe to get that sort of like sourness almost back to Guinness. And that's kind of how I feel with this, where it's like, this is great. This version is wonderful, no complaints, but it's not as gross as the one I like. It's not the Guinness with the dead rats floating in it that I want when I'm drinking a Guinness, you know?
Where are my rats? I need my rats.
I want a shirt of that. Where are my rats?
Where are my rats?
The only other one that we have here, because there honestly are not that many covers of Otherworld out there, oddly enough, as far as like official releases from any groups. This one is from the HD remaster, which is mostly the same, slightly different. So, as the professional musician in the room, I can hear the differences. Do you guys hear any differences, or like, could you pinpoint like how it's different between the two?
Not even a little bit.
I could hear a handful of things, but pinpoint is not the word that I would say more of a broad generalized statement. Like some things sound a little less muddy, like they sound a little cleaner.
Yes, you're spot on. What they've basically done here, from what I can hear just listening to it, I've not actually seen any like documents or videos about like the actual production on this one. But what they've done is basically they've made it so that it's less muddy. They took some of the tracks, primarily like the guitar part and the bass part, and they brought them down quite a bit. They boosted the vocals by a lot, and then they somehow did some sort of like EQ stuff where it kind of trimmed off a lot of those edges of each instrument's what I call sonic niche or sonic niche, where it's like you occupy this section of our sound spectrum, right? And they kind of like cleaned it up a little bit so that everyone's in their own nice little like tidy box throughout the whole entire song. The vocals are boosted, the drums at times are boosted to kind of fill in some areas, but like Drew just said, it's not as muddy. Like that's like literally an actual term you'll hear in the studio sometimes of like, oh, this part sounds muddy, or the whole mix sounds kind of muddy, and you'll do things to like parse it out. And this is a great example of that, where if you listen to the original version, you can hear how the parts kind of are all like taking over the same space, like you're at a punk show, like in the mosh pit. Everything is just on one another, and you can't really hear any clean divides. The remaster took an effort to more cleanly have each instrument be heard in their own tiny little box, and then produced from that perspective. Two different philosophies of mixing and mastering, two different products to get the end. And of course, you at home listening, you can decide which one you prefer. I prefer the muddy one.
Like rats and
yeah, I want my rats in this Guinness, damn it.
Yeah.
I don't have a preference between the remastered and the original, but as we were listening to the remastered version, one of the things that made me realize about the Black Mages version is that while you're right, it is absolutely nowhere near as distorted. It does have a lot of those sort of bluesy, jazzy flourishes that you might get on I assume it's not actually live, but that you might get on a live album, right? Where Ray Charles decides, actually, I'm going to play up on the higher keys for a little bit here, for a moment when I wouldn't normally. And so it feels like it is the Black Mages one flourishes in places where there's not room to in the original. But yeah, I like them both. I just love the way that vocalist sounds.
Yeah, the Black Mages version specifically, you can tell that someone like sat down and like properly arranged what they were going to do throughout that, compared to the original one that was more of like a cut and dry, just like, here's the lead sheet, let's just roll with it. But the Black Mages one has a lot more of that kind of like, I guess, attention to those places you can flourish a little bit. You can add a little bit more of a personal flair to it instead of just go, go now if you want it.
Right.
A new arrangement awaits you.
Got it? That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and thank you to everyone who has reached out to us, and I promise you that before too long we're going to do a Q&A episode. Feel free to let us know what we missed, got wrong, or should have mentioned, plus any questions you may have, or any piece you would like to hear in the future down in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed to Everything is Final Fantasy on Patreon, YouTube, all social media platforms, and especially on Spotify. Also check out Airship Overdrive, Ryan's project, where you can hear arrangements of some of your favorite video game music. Join us next time for a walk through a winter wonderland.